So thank you very much for your time. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at how the planning tactics are integrated into the different reports. There are a couple of things you need to do. It's not 100% automatic. One of those things that you need to do is to look at protection planning actions and see what actions need to be taken and include those in the report. So in the case of Bill's life insurance, I haven't included it. It's only $41,000 estate need, and that can be financed out of Bill's estate. That's not a big issue. The estate need, by the way, is not because there's a cash deficiency. If we go to Sue's life insurance need, remember by applying legacy planning tactics, we've reduced the negative residue for distribution to zero. So there's enough cash to meet all the expenses. So what this represents is what would be necessary to keep the estate whole, to pay all the terminal income taxes, probate fees. That might include capital gains taxes on cottages and rental properties, pay all the other expenses like funeral bills and so on and so on. So again, it's not because there's a lack of liquidity necessarily, it's to keep the estate whole. There are also some critical illness insurance suggestions that are necessary additional amounts. These are all calculated previously, on the Solutions Insurance tab. Document actions, including powers of attorney for personal care, financial matters, and then other things. In their case, they've already taken their winter vacation, already made their TFSA and RSP contributions, so they really don't have any other to-dos for this year. But if we go to 2026, we could include, say, taking a winter vacation. Bill wants to buy a new SUV. We can go down then to TFSAs, include contributions to those. Same thing for RSPs and RESPs. So my suggestion is always to make to-dos a mix of things that are tasks like contributing to TFSAs and RSPs and things that clients find enjoyable. I think it's important to have a good balance. And then if we go to the to-do by year tab, again, we'll jump past 2025 and we'll add things like take a winter vacation, build sport utility, and so on. I always recommend to-dos for maybe a couple of years in the future. Anything beyond that is kind of in the uncontrollable future. Next couple of years, we have more control. And I also think that doing vision entries just for the next few years is the appropriate thing to do. Who knows about vision entries 20 years from now? There is a place in the report where you can type in longer term vision entries if you want to. So, I've included vacations. Sue wants to buy a new vehicle, so I've included that. So let's go to the report tab. And I'm going to load the financial life plan report because that's what we're dealing with. And you can see all the different sections are selected. If, for example, I go to financial planning tactics, I want you to notice that they're all selected, even though some were not applied. So what the software does when it builds a report is it goes through, and if a tactic has not been applied, it does not include it in the report. And that means you can leave everything selected. The other thing that I'm going to suggest to you is that you break the report into really 3 essential reports. And really that means working with a client in 3 different meetings. You can do, them over the internet. And the reason that I suggest this is if you include all the financial planning tactics, how are we going to get you from where you are to where you want to be from a wealth point of view, and the legacy planning tactics, all the estate planning tactics, and all the protection planning tactics, you're going to create a very long report. So my recommendation is that you have 3 focused reports. It lightens everything up for clients, and I think just makes it more digestible for them, the planning process more digestible. So I'm going to deselect legacy planning, protection planning, and the appendix again has more expanded tables. So in the body of the report, there's usually kind of a summary of a tactic, and then if there are more tables related to it, they're moved into the appendix. And that's the case where are we going to put our excess cash? What about the debt plan, paying down that line of credit? What about optimizing portfolio withdrawals? So I'm going to deselect the RIF over withdrawals, the legacy planning, protection planning. I'll leave the annual net cash flow. And then the last thing I'm going to do is, of course, I want to do a comparison. So I'm going to compare planning tactics, no tactics applied, with our planning tactics applied solution. Now, when I click print preview, the software is going to go in and assemble the report. However, what's also important to understand is that it's going to do one more pass at all of the applied tactics. And the reason for that is that if we're working with a client and if we've applied certain tactics and enhanced their wealth, as we've seen, by $600,000 out by life expectancy, they may very well look at that and say, well, by doing all these things, we could afford to spend more. Instead of spending $10,000 on our winter vacations in retirement, what would happen if we, took the luxury trips and spent $20,000 on winter vacations? So we may go in and make a few adjustments to things like lifestyle expenses. Nothing major, not, am I going to retire? Could I retire tomorrow? That would require us to go through and redo all the planning tactics, but just more cash flow sorts of changes that they may want to make. They're minor. So what this here, everything is absolutely up to date. So let's have a look at this, and you can see the table of contents, nothing about legacy planning and so on. A little introduction, little overview of the comparison of the two paths that they were on, some basic assumptions, some a summary of their protection planning calculations, to-do lists, protection planning actions, document actions, other actions like, contributing to TFSAs, taking vacations, buying vehicles, the values exercise if you've done it, the vision, and you can see the different vision entries over the next few years, and then a place where you can go in and put in longer term vision entries. And then, of course, the financial starting point, the net worth statement, and then the value of advice. And what this says is taking all of the planning tactics and applying them has improved the plan by $609,000. It's improved the estate by $300,000. It then itemizes all the tactics that we applied, shows the impact on the wealth part of the estate, and shows the impact on the wealth part of the plan, and shows the impact on the estate difference. And then what the software does is it does a graphical comparison. So not a big change in net worth, but a significant change in income assets, which is what we wanted to focus on. And then as we go through, it will talk about each tactic. So the excess cash tactic ultimately had an impact of $25,000. Shows where the excess cash is going. It does not show an itemized table. Instead, what it says is go to the appendix to see the itemized table. So we wanted to keep the body of the report light, not tables and tables of numbers. Next, applying OAS CPP starting at age 70. Next, the portfolio withdrawals order, and again references the appendix for details, and then applying the splitting of pension income and also the start dates for CPP or QPP. And then it shows these taxable income graphs, which I think are very important and for the client to see. So we can see how we've kept their cash flow to meet expenses, but significantly reduced their taxes. And then an investment policy section, which will include any changes that we might have made to portfolio allocations. If we haven't changed them, then it just shows what the current allocation is. Personal planning tactics, we did not apply. They include things like working longer to meet needs, downsizing a home, taking out a reverse mortgage, and so on. In our case, there was lots of wealth, so we didn't have to do those things. But it does show a current and proposed spending plan. And you can see in this case, the only change, because we didn't do any lifestyle changes, is that we've reduced taxes from 45,000 down to 37,000 for the current year. Education funding, this is a summary for all students. And then in the appendix, we display the same content, but for each student. Summary, income assets forecast over the life of the client, the table just for the next 5 years. Longer term, the numbers are going to be less accurate. Same thing with net worth. And then in the appendix, where's the excess cash going to go? And what we see is for Bill, $20,000 of his excess cash, all of it is going into the line of credit. And then later, non-reg portfolios or TFSAs or whatever. And then in the case of Sue, $14,000 of her cash flow is going into the line of credit. And what we see after that is what happened to the debt. Well, because we have contributed excess cash to the paying down of the debt, we've changed its lifetime from 31 years to 1 year and saved $8,600. And this table of where's the money going and the prepayment schedule for the line of credit will apply for every liability that's paid down. And then there's also a table that shows a prepayment schedule that sums up all payments for all liabilities, what's being paid down for the different liabilities in 2025, the different liabilities in 2026. And then finally, optimizing portfolio withdrawals order, kind of a summary. And then, as you can see here, a table that shows where all the money is coming from. Obviously, those numbers will change over time, but it gives the client some, further information. And then education funding, again, for each child. In this case, we only have Bill Jr. And then a retirement funding table that, again, kind of sums up where all the different funds are coming from. And then the appendix, annual net cash flow, et cetera. Now, this is focused on financial planning tactics. What we did in the plan was we also did the legacy planning tactics. So my recommendation is do a focused report and then go in and load just the legacy planning report and have a different conversation with people. So you can see financial planning tactics. And then down here, I've selected just the legacy planning tactics, and in the appendix, just the legacy planning section of the appendix. So again, we'll click print preview. It'll go through and one more time make any changes. Because this isn't significantly different, there aren't going to be a lot of recalculations that go on. So this will assemble, much more quickly. We're not loading, many, many different tables, just the legacy planning ones. So now we can have that more focused conversation with clients around legacy planning. And again, what we have is the introduction, the to-do list that's related to legacy planning, anything that they need to do on that end. And then the value of advice. Again, it's the total plan difference plus the estate difference that we're showing. But then the graph, of course, and then the legacy planning tactics. And it shows us the estate distribution graphs, who's going to get what. This is before the planning tactics solution. This is after, so we can see a difference that's taking place. And then we can get into the effect on the different tactics. So the donation doesn't have any effect on increasing wealth, but it does show what the effect is on the residue for distribution. So by donating the art, along with the TFSA, what we've been able to do is get the residue for distribution down to 0, because in part of the effect of donating the art and the tax savings, and then in part because we've moved money or set aside money in the TFSA for estate planning purposes. And then there are more sections, a summary, before, after, and the difference in the net value of the estate, 3.9 to 4.2 for Bill, and for Sue, 7.6 to 8.2. And then we get into other tables where the different assets going. You see art going to the charity, for example, and RSPs, TFSAs, where's the money going? You can see some money from Sue's TFSA to the estate, and then the residue for distribution, and then the forecasted estate value, and then a longer chart, which is the estate value projection over time, and then a comparison between the planning tactics and the planning tactics applied, which is showing the advantage later in life. And then finally, the estate comparison, where we can look at pie graphs that compare the two estates. So again, you can see the 7.6 and the 8.3 for Sue being focused on the second to die. So you have the ability then to do a full plan with people, work everything out. It's very fast, but then have more focused conversations that really are around the to-do list. Let's just handle the financial planning tactics, so wealth creation to-dos now. Let's talk more about the estate to-dos later. Let's talk more about the protection planning later. So the whole point of our motivation behind what we've done is that because the AI tactics allow us to build plans very quickly and assemble, reports very easily, then it frees our time to do what I would suggest we always should have done, which is to sit down with people and say, what are the things you want to have and do in life? Well, we want to renovate the kitchen. We want to landscape the backyard. This is what people are planning for, the life they want. So what we're doing now is we're taking the time to properly flesh that out and then letting the computer take over, and far faster and more accurately than we could ever do it. We're letting the computer optimize all the financial planning tactics. And then again, as you can see, the report just follows along quite naturally. So those are the things that I wanted to cover today. Okay, then I want to say thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a really enjoyable long weekend. Thanks.